It's back to school week, except for Palestinians in Gaza. Their once lively classrooms are now in ruins or have become shelters for the displaced. Their backpacks used to be filled with books and now carry the little they have left. I'm Anelise Borges, and on this episode of The Stream, we look into the impact of bombing schools and shattering the possibility of a different future.
من غزة ونفسك بشو؟
نفسي أروح المدرسة. نفسي تخلص الحرب. وظل على الأرض.
80% of schools in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. Israel University, the last remaining in the Strip, was demolished by the Israeli military in January. That plus 195 heritage sites, 227 mosques, and 3 churches, which according to the UN are all at least partially gone. And gone too are the central archives of Gaza, containing documents pertaining to 150 years of history. What impact will all these losses have on the culture and the memory of Palestinians? To discuss, we're joined today by Muhannad Ayyash, a professor of sociology at Mount Royal University, joining us from Alberta, Canada. Samar Saeed, PhD candidate in the history department at Georgetown University. She's joining us from Amman. And Deanna Othman, an educator and journalist from Gaza, joining us today from Chicago. Thank you all so much for joining us here on the stream today. Samar, when a school, a university, is bombed, what you destroy is not only, obviously, the physical building. What gets ravaged is research, resources in all fields. And in that sense, it's quite hard to actually measure the extent of what's been lost in Gaza today, no?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the damage is immeasurable, and a lot of what Israel has destroyed is unretrievable. And as you mentioned, it's not about just the destruction of buildings, but it's also destroying the spaces where a lot of Palestinians in Gaza used to access, which are the classrooms, the playgrounds. So the educational infrastructure is not just about imparting knowledge, which is extremely important, but it's also about building those relationships between different segments of society, building friendships, building connections. So Israel really destroyed that, and this destruction has a great impact on destroying the fabric of society and really severing, in a way, the relationship between different cities in Gaza. Because, you know, when you're in school, you're usually exchanging knowledge with other students. You're also visiting other schools. You're going on day trips. You're learning about the city. So all this communal aspect of the educational system is basically destroyed.
There are so many levels to this story. Muhannad, the foundations of Palestinian society are being reduced to rubble. It's not me saying it. It's a panel of UN experts that have issued a warning earlier this year calling on Israel to halt what it described as systematic pattern of violence against educational institutions in Gaza, and one could say against its academics as well. Let me ask your take on why an educated society of Palestinians is a threat to Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very deliberate part of the Israeli plan to eliminate the Palestinians as an autonomous, sovereign, collective people. Education is a critical part of Palestinian resilience and resistance to the Israeli colonial effort to eliminate them from their lands, to expel them from their lands, to erase Palestinians from history. And Palestinians take education very seriously precisely because it's a source of pride for them, and it's a critical part of their effort to assert their right to existence and autonomy. So when Israel destroys the educational infrastructure, what it is doing is that it's trying to deplete the Palestinians' ability to be self-autonomous. So, for example, whenever reconstruction happened, and we don't even know when that's going to happen and what shape it's going to take, you're now going to have to replace years and years and years of training for surgeons, for historians, for engineers, for scientists. The list goes on. You can't just replace all those years of training and education and research very quickly. So that means that Palestinians in any kind of reconstruction will be very dependent on others to come in and help them. Surgeons from outside of Palestine to come in and do surgeries for scholars, academics in the social sciences and history to come and narrate their story for them, and so on and so forth. So it's depleting the ability of Palestinians to be autonomous, self-governing people.
All this war is going to have an enormous impact for years to come, as you're saying. Deanna, you're an educator. I would like your take on how a generation that is empowered, that understands its history and its rights, can be indeed a threat, dangerous to an occupier.
Absolutely. I mean, as the saying goes, knowledge is power. So when people are empowered with knowledge of their history, of their culture, of their tradition, of their roots as Indigenous people in a land, this is quite possibly the greatest threat to an occupation that is illegitimate and illegal. And so when you have history, when you have novels and oral tradition and books and poetry and all of these things that trace your family, your lineage back to the roots in that land, this is something that is a grave threat to that occupier. And as was mentioned by the other panelists, Palestinians really value education. And this is something I witnessed firsthand in my last visit to Gaza, which was in June 2023. My sister-in-law had almost been finished with her PhD. She was nearly completing it. And this was a few months before the genocide began. Students who had just graduated high school, they were celebrating their Tawjihi results, one of the greatest days of the year in Palestine. And the next year, those very students, did not find universities to attend because they were all targeted in this onslaught of violence.
Again, you're talking about students that were aiming to complete a PhD in a context of a so-called open-air prison with such limited resources. So that speaks volumes about how much Palestinians value education. Samar, with regards to the deliberate targeting of educational institutions, experts have been using the term scholasticide. And you actually wrote an article about it. Can you walk us through where the term comes from and what it actually means?
Sure. So scholasticide is a term that basically explains the targeted, deliberate, and systematic destruction of the educational systems in Palestine. And it was coined by Palestinian academic and scholar Professor Karma Nabulsi when she was witnessing the Israel aggression in Gaza in 2008 and 2009. So she referred to the destruction that we all saw at the time as scholasticide. But since then, of course, the term has evolved, and it doesn't just include the infrastructure in terms of universities and schools, but it also includes the archives, it also includes the heritage sites, it also includes the libraries, which Israel has actually destroyed all the libraries that existed in Gaza. And another important layer to the term scholasticide, it is the fact that it's not just a one-time event, but it's an ongoing process, or it's part of Israel colonial policy that has started in Palestine before 1948. And the targeting of Palestinian knowledge and educational sites and cultural heritage had really, the root starts before 1948, during 1948, when the Israeli soldiers used the librarians to go around West Jerusalem and really loot and steal private libraries in Palestinian homes that currently are basically found in the Israeli archive. Of course, Palestinians can't access this material. And they did that again in the diaspora in Lebanon in 1982 when they invaded Lebanon. They targeted the Palestine Research Center and looted archival material, manuscripts, and books, and bombed the building. They did that during the Intifada, and we've seen it again in Gaza in 2009, again in 2014, and we see it now on an unprecedented level.
70 plus years of scholasticide actually ongoing. And you mentioned 48. Palestinians have historically used education as resistance. In 48, one of the first things those who had been expelled from their homes did was to open schools for their children in refugee camps. And that continues to be the case now. Here is Noor, founder of Schools Without Borders, trying to keep the youth in Gaza interested in learning despite the constant shelling and bombardment.
Hello, my name is Noor Nasar. I'm an English law graduate. I'm 24 years old from Rafah. I began talking to children in camps about education using simple activities and found that a large percentage are illiterate, and even those who were at an excellent academic level are now facing difficulty learning. I faced a bigger obstacle, which is the curriculum. What curriculum will I offer these children? It's hard for them to interact with the regular ones, or that of the Ministry of Education, because they're difficult and we're at a time of war, and these students have been harmed a lot. Until I came up with a program that incorporates using games and that is suitable with the state of emergency of the children. We have classes where we offer subjects like math, Arabic, and English. We split the students into categories. We work with all children until the legal age of 18, split into different levels. Thankfully, I conducted the first classes at camps in Rafah, and they were well received. Around May 11th, we were displaced from Rafah and headed to Nusayrat. Displacement was another challenge for me, but I overcame it and continued in Nusayrat. After that, I also began expanding to the middle area in Borges, and Zawaida and Deir al-Balah. And this week, we have just moved to Khan Yunis.
Muhannad, your reaction to what Noor is doing, I mean, she takes resisting through education to a whole new level.
I mean, absolutely, and it's so inspiring what people like her are doing, what the people of Gaza in general are doing in their resilience and unbelievable resistance. Let me say this: when it comes to education for kids, I remember during COVID when schools in Canada and other places shut down for 2 months, people lost their minds about the future of their children, going, "Oh, these 2 months have I don't know the effects of the long-term effects of that on my kids," and these kids were still getting education by their parents who were also at home or through online resources and so on. And people thought that these 2 months were going to be the end of their children's careers or futures and development and so on. Now multiply that feeling that you had for your kids during COVID by 1,000 at the very least to get a sense of what kids in Gaza are going through. They've lost an entire year. They're looking to lose another year right now. Not only that, but their schools have been turned into rubble. Their educators, principals, fellow students have been killed and murdered by the Israelis. It's unfathomable what they are going through. And to see this kind of resilience in the face of that is quite inspiring for everyone. Let me sort of wrap it up with this. The Israeli state, we hear their politicians calling us animals all the time. This isn't new. They've called us animals for a long time. This is textbook European colonialism, because that's what Israel is. It's an offshoot of European colonialism. They want the thing is that they want us to be animals. They want us to be the savages that they dream us to be, so that they can kill us without feeling any consequence for what they're doing. And part of that is to take away our education, is to remove from us the ability to be, like I said, self-sufficient, create knowledge about ourselves, speak about ourselves, about our story, narrate our story, engineer our own buildings, and so on and so forth. And what you see here by people like Noor is the response to that, to say, no, you cannot take that away from us. You can destroy all our buildings. You can set us back as much as you want. We're going to pick up whatever pieces we have and we're going to start rebuilding, even during the moment of destruction, which is, it shows you that resilience of the Palestinian people and why Israel has not been able for over 100 years to eliminate us as they have always been seeking to do.
Wow. I mean, you bring so many very important points, but what you said about COVID really got me. I mean, I have goosebumps. When you think about how everyone was super worried about their children, you're absolutely right. Add to that famine, bombing, the killing of your parents sometimes and all your loved ones. And here they are, still trying to fight for a different future. Deanna, just how important education it is. I mean, you work with education, you work with the diaspora right now. Can you tell us if there are stories that have stuck with you?
I mean, we've seen recently students come over to the United States and join us here in Chicago that have left Gaza. They were able to evacuate earlier on. And their stories are absolutely harrowing. And some of them have come to finish rotations for medical school. Others are children in elementary school. And they have left the ravages of war. Those who were in medical school with unspeakable stories regarding what they were trying to work with in the hospitals as they were trying to help those who were injured and things they were not even trained to do, but trying to help in whatever way they could. And now they're here in the U.S. Trying to, salvage what is left of, what they have and to continue this education. And it's absolutely inspiring to see people with that will to escape a genocide, to make it to another country, a place where they are not familiar with the system whatsoever, and to continue their education. Same thing with children. Some have joined the school that I teach in. They don't necessarily speak English. They are gravely injured, yet they are coming every morning to school with the other children and trying to, acclimate to the new environment, trying to get into the new curriculum. And this is, again, despite all of the trauma that they have endured. And they're able to integrate, very well. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges, but this is something that is so important to them and to their parents. And so they're using whatever strength that they have left to really devote themselves to continuing their education.
And on that strength and that resilience, we actually managed to speak to one student in Gaza on what the war has meant to her and to her dreams and what it's like to try and continue pursuing her degree over there. Take a look.
السلام عليكم، أنا أفاق بكر، عمري 23 عام، طالبة طب أسنان في المستوى الخامس في جامعة الأزهر. قبل أحداث 7 من أكتوبر بدأت دوامي في السنة الخامسة من طب الأسنان. كنت كتير متحمسة وسعيدة لأني حلبس الثوب الفلسطيني وأناقش مشروع التخرج وحشوف فخر وسعادة عائلتي فيا، ولكن الاحتلال الإسرائيلي حرمني من كل هذا. قصف الاحتلال الإسرائيلي جامعتي، أحرق أدواتي وقتل أصدقائي وأوقف تعليمي بالكامل. في الوقت اللي مفترض أمسك فيه الإبرة والمراية لأعالج وأخفف آلام الناس، الآن أنا ببحث عن الكرتون والخشب لتوليع النار والخبز والطهي. بدأت جامعتي التعليم الإلكتروني من تقريباً 3 شهور، ولكن من الصعب جداً المتابعة والدراسة في ظل هذه الظروف الصعبة. الكثير من أصدقائي بيعيشوا في خيام مضطرين للسير مسافات طويلة للحصول على إنترنت، وكثير من مدرسيني ومعلميني استشهدوا أو بيعانوا من الظروف الصعبة اللي بتمنعهم من تسجيل المحاضرات وتنزيلها، غير أنه لا نستطيع إكمال المواد العملية بسبب عدم توفر عيادات كافية لاستقبالنا وتعليمنا. اشتقت لدراستي، للامتحانات، لصديقاتي، اشتقت أعيش يوم طبيعي زي أي شابة في العالم. بتمنى توقف الحرب في أسرع وقت ممكن وأكمل دراستي وأتخرج وأساعد أبناء وطني عشان نطلع من هذه المحنة، ولسه عندي كثير أهداف وغايات وأحلام لسه نفسي أحققها.
Samar, when we talk about rebuilding Gaza in the future, People like Afaq will be extremely important. Muhannad had already talked about this a little bit, but I would like your take on how important it is to rebuild the physical infrastructure, but also keeping these educated youth in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. First, I want to say that Israel has clearly failed in its project to eliminate Palestinians, given the resilience and the hope and the courage that we've seen from the people in Gaza, including students. And second of all, I think it's very important now when we start talking about rebuilding the education system in Gaza, that we really center the people of Gaza, center its educators, its researchers, its students in the planning and execution in the future. I mean, we keep hearing talks about, Israel, the US wanting to be involved in the reconstruction phase after they've destroyed everything on the ground. And of course, we know what that means. It means a Western, colonial, liberal, capitalist education discourse and curriculums that does not speak to the indigenous people, does not speak to our tradition, our history, our knowledge. And we really need to be very careful. I mean, scholars in Gaza already sent out a statement calling on all people in the world who are interested in the topic of education and want to assist and want to help to really talk to Palestinians in Gaza, talk to the educators and know what their needs are. I want to mention one point as well, why this is extremely important. It's important because, Gaza has been besieged for the past 15 years, and Israel tried to isolate it from the rest of the world. But this did not happen because of the Palestinians in Gaza, because of the educators and the teachers and the students who really were able to break the siege in the sense of communicating with scholars around the world, from writing stories from Gaza, from sharing their knowledge, their science, their inventions to the rest of the world. And this is very scary for Israel, as my panelists said, because they want to show the world that, Palestinians are backward people, people that are uneducated. So our existence and the existence of the people in Gaza is a threat to the Israeli colonial project. It will continue to be a threat. And that's why Israel is not just targeting the education, but as we've seen, they're targeting the healthcare infrastructure, they're targeting the journalists, they're targeting our scientists. So it's an overall plan of elimination.
I do appreciate your passion and the need to convey all these very important points. We're almost out of time. I would like to get Deanna to tell us if there are projects that people can help.
There are certainly projects with universities where people have been working on connections for students to come over and finish their education. There are connections with universities who are doing online courses where people from Gaza can join. There are all kinds of initiatives through different universities in the United States and through Palestinian organizations in the United States. So we are, trying to make any connections that we can in order to make this a transition that is a little bit easier for our brothers and sisters in Palestine to be able to continue their education. Certainly those who have been evacuated also are trying to get integrated into schools here on the ground physically. They require support in many different ways, mentoring, scholarships, all of these kinds of things. So those are some things that we're working on in the United States. But I know that there are initiatives like this all over the world right now.
Muhannad, I would like for you to send a message on behalf of these children that we're actually seeing right now here in our studio, who are in Gaza and who, when are asked what they miss most or what they would like to do when the war is over, they often say, my classroom, my teacher, going back to school. What is your message to the world today on behalf of these kids?
My message is to become courageous and match the courage of those children and commit yourself to actual real action to end the assault on the Palestinian people. And there's only one way to do that: political and economic isolation of the Israeli state. The Israeli state will only respond to pressure. They won't respond to words of condemnation. They'll only respond to economic and political pressure. We need everybody in the world to participate in the political and economic isolation of the Israeli state. It helped bring down apartheid and colonialism in South Africa. It can help bring down apartheid and settler colonialism in Palestine. So my message is, commit yourself to real action to help the Palestinian people gain the rightful freedom and liberation.
Muhannad, Samar, and Deanna, thank you so much for being part of the stream today. And thank you all for joining us. Stay in touch with us via social media. You can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream to send us your questions and suggestions, and we'll look into them. Take care, and I'll see you soon.